What's good, y'all? We finally have another trade. This is just the second trade so far this season, and we're less than a week away from the trade deadline. Kind of blows my mind that we haven't had like any trades yet, but like I said last night, we got our second one. Shams Charania reported that there was a 3-team deal between the Sacramento Kings, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Chicago Bulls. Just to quickly go over the details of the trade in case you guys don't know, the Cleveland Cavaliers are sending DeAndre Hunter to the Kings. The Kings are sending Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroder back to the Cavs. And then the Bulls are in this to facilitate some salary. They are taking on Dario Saric's contract, getting it off the books from the Kings. And then also the Kings and the Cavs are each sending 1 second-round pick for the Bulls, thanking them for just, making this deal work out. There's a lot of filler going on in there, but basically it's DeAndre Hunter in exchange for Dennis Schroder and Keon Ellis. Of course, we are going to go over each individual team's perspective of this trade. I'm going to give my thoughts on why they did it, why it's good, why it's not, whatever. I am also going to be covering all the trades going forward into the trade deadline, including a special trade deadline recap video coming out on Thursday. So make sure you guys don't miss out on that. Subscribe to the channel so you don't. But without further ado, let's get into the breakdown of this trade. If you guys have seen some of my other trade recaps, you know I always start by talking about the team that got the best player in the deal. And honestly, I think there's an argument about who the best player in this deal is. It could be DeAndre Hunter, it could be Dennis Schroder, it could be Keon Ellis. Depending on who you ask, I'm sure you'll get a few different opinions on who the actual best player is in this trade. Regardless though, just speaking total value, I do think the Cavs got the most value in this trade, so I'm going to start by looking at it from their perspective. They're bringing in Dennis Schroder and Keon Ellis. Both of these guys I definitely think are going to be able to help the Cavs this season. Starting off with Dennis Schroder, I think one of the biggest struggles that the Cavs deal with right now is creation outside of their star ball handlers. Basically, on every given night, it's only Donovan Mitchell that can really create a shot. Obviously, Darius Garland is a great creator for himself and for the rest of the team as well, but he's been struggling with a lot of injuries, and that leaves a lot of the burden just on Donovan Mitchell solely. Last year, they had a guy like Ty Jerome coming off their bench where he could give some creation and stuff like that. And obviously, he left in free agency, and they haven't really been able to replace the production that Ty Jerome was giving them off the bench. I do think that Dennis Schroder is going to definitely be able to do that. I think Dennis Schroder is definitely a reliable backup point guard. I think when you try to get him to start, that's when things get a little bit iffy. But if he is your 6th man, 7th man, whatever, coming off your bench, I think that's the perfect role for him. We saw him do that for the Detroit Pistons last year in the playoffs, and he was absolutely terrific for them as a creator, as a pick and roll ball handler, a guy that can knock down a catch and shoot 3, and then of course he is a very scrappy defender, always giving effort on that side of the ball. So there's a lot of things to like about Dennis Schroder, and I think that he is going to be able to really help the Cavs in a few different ways that they're lacking right now. The one thing I'm a little bit iffy about with this fit is the Cavs are kind of committing to always having at least 1 and maybe even 2 small guards on the court at all times. Obviously, their starting backcourt is Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. Both of those guys are like 6'1", 6'2", small guards. And then now off their bench, you're adding Dennis Schroder, who's 6'1", and then they usually run like Sam Morrell or something off the bench, who's 6'4", so a little bit better. But still, all around, they just have really small backcourts coming as the starters and then off the bench. And in a playoff setting, again, I don't really know how much I love that. An easy fix to that is, of course, the other guy they got in this deal, Keon Ellis. I do think that they're going to be using Keon Ellis more as a wing, off-the-ball, 2-guard type of situation. So, of course, I'm sure there will be some lineups where Keon Ellis is the 2-guard next to a Donovan Mitchell to give them some more size, or next to a Darius Garland. But also, I do think a big majority of the lineups that he's in, he's going to be running the small forward, especially now since Max Strus has not been able to play this season so far. If they really are lacking size, though, they can easily slide Keon up to the shooting guard, and then he's 6'6", and he definitely could give them some more size. Regardless, though, I do think that's just my one little caveat with the addition of Dennis Schroder. And then since we already started talking about him a little bit, I guess we could shift gears over to Keon Ellis. I really really like this pickup. He is one of the better perimeter defenders in the NBA. I mentioned he's 6'6". He's really good at guarding like 1 through 3. Some 4s, but really 1 through 3 is his bread and butter. He's a great perimeter guy, always poking balls loose, being really scrappy and physical with the ball handlers on the opposing teams. The biggest question with Keon Ellis is, will his offense ever be good enough to solidify himself as a rotational player in the playoffs? Obviously, we see in playoff situations all the time, teams figure out your worst shooter and then completely ignore him and say, let him beat us. Keon Ellis he's been able to sometimes knock down shots at a decent rate, and it's usually a very small volume, but he has shown signs that he can knock down a 3-point shot. Will it be consistent enough where it's not an issue and it's not really hurting the Cavs and their spacing? I guess that's really what we're going to have to figure out. Regardless, though, I definitely think he's going to be able to add value defensively and hopefully bring the Cavs back to that defensive mindset that we saw so much from them from last year. Then quickly to look at what the Cavs gave up to bring in these guys. DeAndre Hunter, who they traded for last trade deadline, he came here, and last year he was pretty solid for them. This year he was definitely having a down season scoring the ball. He just wasn't nearly as efficient as he once was. So obviously that was a little bit of disappointment. But then also there are reports saying that he wanted out of Cleveland, that he just wasn't happy with the situation. So it kind of, the writing was on the wall. It was expected that he was probably going to be moved. Then they add in the second round pick, which was a 2027 Denver second round pick, to this deal to bring in these two guys that I think definitely will both be able to contribute and be rotational pieces. I think that's very good value. They also saved some money off their books this season with this trade, and I saw there were some murmurs around Twitter saying that maybe they're going to try to get under that second apron to make a big trade. I don't know if that's really going to happen, but regardless, whenever you're able to shave a little bit of money off the top and get a little bit closer to being under those aprons, it's always a good thing. So overall, I like the player fit. I like the asset management that they gave up. And then also, I like the fact that they were able to free up some money. If I were to give a grade on this trade for the Cleveland Cavaliers, I'm going to give them a B+. Again, all around, I like pretty much all aspects of this trade. It's not a crazy, slam dunk, home run out the park type of trade, so that's why it's not an A. But it's a very solid trade. I think they improved. They deserve a B+. Now to look at this trade from the Sacramento Kings perspective, it was very obvious that the Kings needed to shake things up. They are one of the worst teams in the NBA while also being one of the oldest teams in the NBA. That is not a good recipe right there. You do not want to be in a situation like that as a franchise. So it makes sense that they're going to start making these trades. When they signed Dennis Schroder this offseason, they expected him to be their starting point guard. He was coming off a great playoff run with the Detroit Pistons, or I guess a great playoff series with the Detroit Pistons. Obviously, he has been a little bit of a disappointment. He lost his starting spot to Russell Westbrook, who was a free agent all the way up until like September, I want to say. So not a very good look for Dennis Schroder. He is under contract for the next 3 seasons as well. So it makes sense why they wanted to move off of his contract and move off of his money. And I know a lot of people are very upset with the fact that they included Keon Ellis in essentially a salary dump of Dennis Schroder. And I get optically that looks a little bit bad. But also, when you're the Kings and you barely play Keon Ellis, you've been very vocal that you don't want to pay him at the end of this year because he's an unrestricted free agent. You don't have a lot of leverage. People aren't going to be throwing those first-round picks, multiple seconds, or anything that you really want for Keon Ellis if you don't show them that he's worth that. So I get on paper it doesn't make sense or it doesn't look good that they included a young player like Keon in a deal like this and didn't get much back. But also, they kind of played themselves into this corner here where Keon lost so much value based on what they did. And even with that being said, I don't necessarily think that this is a terrible trade for the Kings. They bring in a guy like DeAndre Hunter who has talent. They're just bringing talent into the door. And when you're a rebuilding team, I've said it before, I like that aspect of it. They also get a little bit younger. Dennis Schroder was 31 or 32 as a small point guard. Now they bring in a guy like DeAndre Hunter who's not young by any means, but he's 28, so he is definitely younger. And then also, he's shown flashes that he could be a solid solid scorer and creator in the league, especially when you look at what he was doing with the Atlanta Hawks to start last season. That's what kind of made the Cavs intrigued in trading for him in the first place. He was averaging like 19 points per game on really good efficiency. Then he went to the Cavs. It dropped a little bit in points per game, but the efficiency even went up. So he looked like a really good solidified scorer, a great six-man option. They also free up a little bit of money as well. Like I mentioned, Dennis Schroder was under contract for the next few seasons. DeAndre Hunter is a unrestricted free agent, not this offseason, but the one after that. So he is under contract for next year, and then he gets off the books. So it does free up money a little bit earlier for Sacramento. Also, I do think that it's a pretty good opportunity to maybe have him flipped. Obviously, he will be a unrestricted free agent after next year, and then also with the opportunity here in Sacramento, if he's able to play his value back up, I could see a bunch of different teams being pretty interested in him. So it could be just a situation where they get some asset and then flip it a little bit down the line. So if that's the case, I do like this for Sacramento. Like I said though, it's a start of a rebuild. They have to move some of these older players and assets and just bring in youth and value. Those are the two things they should be going after right now. And I definitely think they added at least a little bit of value. I will say I don't like that they included a second-round pick in this deal. When you look at the second-round pick they gave up, it's not like it's some crazy value second-round pick. It's a 2029 second-round pick. That's the least valuable out of New York, Detroit, and Milwaukee. So honestly, more than likely, it's going to be whoever has a better record between Detroit and New York in 2029. That's the second round pick they're getting. I don't expect that to be very good. So it's not the end of the world, but overall, you don't want to really be shelling out draft picks like this when you're in a situation that Sacramento is in. Overall, though, if I'm going to give this trade a grade for the Sacramento Kings, I'm going to give them a C+. I definitely think that the Cavs won this trade, if you want to say it like that. But overall, I don't think this is a terrible trade like a lot of people are really saying it is for Sacramento. It does suck that they had to include Keon Ellis in a deal like this, as well as give up a second-round pick. But I don't mind the fact that they're bringing in a guy like DeAndre Hunter. I do think that they could get some decent value for him later on down the line. And then, of course, last but not least, we do have the third team that's included in this trade. That is, of course, the Chicago Bulls. And they are just the facilitators in this deal. They're taking on Dario Saric's contract in order for this to really work. And then they are also getting 2 second-round picks for taking on that contract. Like I mentioned before, the 2 picks they're getting, the one from the Cavs is a 2027 pick from Denver, and then the one from Sacramento is that 2029 least favorable between New York, Detroit, and Milwaukee. And obviously the Bulls did have to give up something in order to receive something, so they did give up two-way contract player Emmanuel Miller. He is being sent to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Honestly, I didn't include it in the deal because, no disrespect to him, I don't really think it's going to matter too much to the deal. If you guys are interested in finding out more about Emmanuel Miller or even any other two-way contract player in the league, make sure you check out twowaytalents.com. It's a great database tracking all of the two-way talents made by a friend of the channel, Finn Keel. So again, if you guys are interested in any of that, make sure you check out that. But yeah, they gave up Emmanuel Miller, and then they also had to waive Jevon Carter in order to make space for Dario Saric to come in. That kind of does suck. Shout out to Jevon Carter. I really do like him as just a player overall. I think he should be able to get picked up by a team out there. Which team? I don't really know. But he has value in this league, and I'm sure he will get picked up. Overall, though, there's not really too much to talk about from the Bulls' perspective. I do want to just applaud them for adding value in a trade. It seems like it's been forever since they really added value in a trade. I know I've been very critical about the Bulls and their front office moves for a little bit now, so I don't want to be a hypocrite. I want to applaud them for finally making a good move. I've said time and time again, the main thing you want to look at from your front office is being able to join deals like this and add second-round draft capital or any type of draft capital, any type of value for essentially nothing. They're paying Dario Saric for half of a season. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the year, and they add 2 second-round picks. That is great GMing, great value. Again, great job by the Bulls. What do you guys think, though? Let me know in the comments below. What grade would you give each of these teams in this trade, and who do you think won this trade? I'm interested to see what you guys think. Of course, like I mentioned, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel if you already haven't, because I will be covering all of the trades that happen from now to the trade deadline, including a big super trade deadline special coming out. So you do not want to miss out on that. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. In the description, there's links to all my social medias, so make sure you follow me on all those to keep up to date with me. Catch y'all.